Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. And I'm delighted that my guest today is a man who doesn't just write about music, it's his life. From co owning and editing the Powerhouse Louder Than Words to launching Louder Than War live, running a 24/7 radio station, and co producing the Joy Division stage sensation New Dawn Fades, he's got stories, secrets, and the soundtrack to match. Please welcome Nigel Carr. How you doing,
Thank you,
Nigel?
Andrew. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. That just about wraps it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. We can go now.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks a lot. Join us next time on the Andrew Eborn Show. It's going to be good. So,
Fabulous.
how did you start? What was your earliest music memory?
My earliest memory was singing the Beach Boys, Sloop John B, Walking Down the Road. I wanna go home. And it was 1966, I guess it was. And just after that, I just really got into music when I was in my teens. I loved punk music. I saw the Sex Pistols on So It Goes, which was Tony Wilson's show on Granada
Yeah,
TV
brilliant.
in 1976. I think it was late August 1976. And from then I was kind of smitten and I just fell into just loving that type of music. And it's been a lifelong passion, to be honest with you. I'm
And,
one
and
of
I
the
know we
few
had Steve
people.
Levine on the show earlier
Oh,
talking
did
about the
you?
Beach Boys.
Fabulous.
And
Yeah,
fabulous stuff. And you're right, it's the soundtrack to people's lives, wasn't it? So, was the Beach Boys, was
totally.
that your first record?
It was the first time I ever heard or was conscious of pop music. Obviously, I was way too young for it to be my first record. My first record was sort of Slade, and then I got into Pink Floyd. But punk sort of loomed very, very quickly. And like I said, I absolutely adored the Sex Pistols. And from there on, I went on to love Joy Division and post punk and Wire and stuff like that. And this year in April, and it was a great privilege to interview John Lydon as part of what I do with Louder Than War. I'd already interviewed him 3 years earlier, and I met him in Warrington a few weeks ago. So we had a bit of a chat and a beer.
Yeah, no, I was
Um,
watching that just before coming on. A great interview, and he revealed a side to him he doesn't normally reveal, the bit without being totally dependent on alcohol. Although he did
He
confess to having.
absolutely did. I mean, he told me that he'd stopped drinking, but I'll be honest with you, when we had a chat in Warrington, he was slugging bottles of Corona.
Well, he did
But
say
he,
later on in the interview, whilst he might have stopped drinking, he does
yeah,
occasionally have one, which is
absolutely, absolutely. And he chain smokes sort of Marlboros. But he came up with some wonderful stories about, how Sid couldn't play bass. They sent Sid Vicious to see Lemmy, and Lemmy said, he's got no rhythm, he can't play anything. He said, what do we do with him? So he gave me these wonderful stories of meeting Alice Cooper, like I say, Lemmy, and all the sort of protagonists from the day. And I had two wonderful hour-long interviews with him in which he just chatted like it was just a conversation. It was
yeah.
superb.
And that's what I love
Um,
about when you're sort of seasoned in this sort of stuff. You don't need to look for the sound bites. I mean, he's just such a natural anyway, isn't he?
He totally is. And the thing is that he speaks so freely. And you've interviewed a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of people. Sometimes it's difficult to extract information from them. I spoke with Dave Barbarossa, who was the drummer in Bow Wow Wow and the original Adam and the Ants. And I felt I was pulling information, whereas John would willingly give
Yeah.
information, a lot of information. And sometimes you had to dig in and stop him from rambling. And I said to you before we started this that I can ramble, but it was very much sort of digging in and saying, but because I had a list of questions and
Yes.
I needed to get those answers, but I wove it into a sort of interview where I think it was conversational and I managed to extract the information, but I
Yeah.
had to kind of stop him and talk over him sometimes. And that's not, doesn't always come
Well,
across
but
well,
I
you
think
know?
you're right. I mean, the key to lots of these things, do a massive amount of research and actually,
Yeah,
and then
that's
see
what
where the
I did.
conversation leads. Because so often
Yeah,
people have their list of questions. It's so obvious they've got their list of
yeah,
questions and not even
yeah.
listening to the answers.
I know, and that you can tell. You can absolutely tell because they don't really respond to what's being said.
Yeah,
And
what
I
was
think
that?
the art,
What was that?
they don't really
What was that?
respond. You got me, you
Come
got me.
on, wake up.
They don't respond. And of course, there's no sort of interaction. And I think the clever interviewer, as you clearly are, is one that can sort of respond and answer back and keep the conversation going. And those people that go, so what was your first influence?
Yeah.
Hopeless. It's just stop, start, stop, start. And I'm not like that. As an interviewer or an interviewee, as you can tell. So
And it's
yeah,
great because, as you say,
fascinating.
it's a conversation, but people do want to extract that sort of information with sort of little sound
Absolutely
bites they
right.
haven't
Yeah,
heard before. So
absolutely
let's
right.
talk about your career then. You talk about the Beach Boys being
Yeah,
your early inspiration. How did you get
yeah.
involved in the business?
Well, I'd gone through a career as a shoe buyer. I know this sounds really sort of
Hey,
unlikely. I was a shoe buyer for Barrett Shoes for 10 years. And then I started selling shoes for 10 years out of Vietnam, China, and places like that, Portugal, Italy. I made all the shoes, the Ben Sherman shoes in the late 90s. So I had a really sort of varied career. I don't know whether you'd call it a polymath going from shoe buyer to writer to producer, but I've certainly just followed whatever I wanted to do. And I think it comes from a kind of punk attitude that I developed in the late 70s and early 80s, that you really should try and paddle your own canoe.
yeah,
Really should try and move in whichever direction you really want to. And because I was so into music, and I bought everything Pink Floyd ever did, everything New Order did, everything Joy Division ever did, I was so into music, even through having a family and growing up and all that sort of thing, running an online shoe business, whatever it was. I always had this musical thing in the background. I have every copy of the Melody Maker and NME going back to the 70s
oh,
in my
brilliant.
shed. And so I was just sort of, friend of mine became a photographer in Manchester, David Gleave, and he's quite a
Yes.
celebrated photographer now. And he said, look, I've got this gig I want you to come with me to, Esper Scout. I'm going to photograph them for Louder Than War. And I said, I've got a writer. I said, okay, who's that then? He said, you. I said, right, okay. So I started writing for Louder the War on a regular basis. I went
Right.
to see bands as diverse as Placebo and Kiss and Alice Cooper and some up and coming bands in Manchester like the Blinders and Cabbage and bigger bands like Elbow and Morrissey. And I wrote about them. I interviewed some of them, and it just became a kind of overriding passion. And then John Robb I we kind of needed more help running the business side. And because I'd done so many business activities through, buying shoes, supplying shoes, and other sort of business activities, I suggested doing a t-shirt line. So we
Yeah.
started a t-shirt line. I helped finance and grow the business, and it's kind of quite stable now. And we have, 50 writers all around the world from Los Angeles and New York, as you know, Eileen Shapiro, right across to
Yes.
St. Petersburg, Don Voliver. So we've got this big team of writers and photographers, and the website's kind of booming. We write about anything and everything that we really like, from the big gigs of sort of Taylor Swift down to the sweaty little ones at the Castle in Manchester, or the 100 Club, down in
No,
London. So
and it's
all
brilliant seeing
over.
that because everybody
Yeah,
in the industry can learn from other people as well. So, I mean, you've interviewed
100%.
absolutely everybody. What's your
Well,
go-to
not
question?
my go-to question, really. I mean, the thing is that you can cynically go down the route of saying, well, what was your first influence, and what was, as Frank Sidebottom famously said to one interviewee, what coloured pens do you use when you write your songs? So you can really kind of go in deep. My advice to anybody is just learn the character and pick out questions that are relevant to the story of how did you get on with Malcolm McLaren? Is it true? With Lydon, go right in deep, because
Yeah.
those generic questions everybody's heard. Those generic questions are on everybody's hit list. What was the first record you bought? Who influenced you? Where you're touring next week. Nobody's bothered about that. But you talk about, would Sid Vicious still be alive had he not met Nancy Spungen?
Yeah. So,
That
what's
is
the
a
answer to that
really
then? What would Sid the Vicious still be alive?
probably not.
No, no. I think that's a fairly easy one as well, isn't it? Are you?
But
Yeah.
no, because it allows John to go, well, actually, Sid was my great mate at school.
Yeah.
He just went down the wrong route. He started taking drugs, and it becomes a conversation. So my advice to anybody is just don't stick to generic questions, because they've
Yeah,
all been asked
but
before.
you're right to a certain extent. I also think that people
Yeah,
still like to know what the fact that you're influenced by the Beach Boys. I think is fantastic. It's a
they
soundtrack to
do.
everybody's life. It's a bit
They
unusual,
do.
and also they'd
Yeah.
like to know what your first gig was and whether that completely
Yeah,
rewired your brain. So what was it?
it is true. My first gig was Kraftwerk.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, at the Palace in Manchester, and it was when they brought out Autobahn, and everybody knew Autobahn at the time, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. But
Yeah,
what they don't know is that Comet and Melody goes on for 20 minutes, and it's
yes,
quite You're quite likely to fall asleep in the middle of it.
Right.
So, like Tangerine Dream and those early electronic artists, they would have kind of one go-to song, like Autobahn, and afterwards they did The Model and
Yeah.
Computer World and all those all those wonderful tunes. But before that, they did long, drony sections of music, kind of inspired by Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells or Can or Noi or one of those early sort of what they termed krautrock bands, So yeah, that was the first one, Kraftwerk, and then Elton John.
But you're right. Well, one of the things I have a lot of artists, as you know, there's politicians and some quite controversial figures on the Andrew Eborn Show.
Yeah.
Always a joy.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome, which is fun. But the interesting thing, a lot of artists say they get pretty fed up having to play the hit they're really famous for, and a lot of them refuse to until management persuades them.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Some absolutely love it,
Yeah.
and some don't. And it's very, very interesting. When you go and see somebody like Public Image Limited, who have, I mean, John's famous for the Pistols. Of course, he won't go near any Pistols stuff.
Yeah.
Ironically, I saw Peter Hook at Rebellion on Saturday,
Right.
the Saturday just gone, and Peter Hook from Joy Division, the bassist from Joy Division, he said on the 6th of June 1976, I went to see the Sex Pistols at the Lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester. And I love John Lydon. I love the Sex Pistols. And he played Anarchy in the UK. So it really depends on the artist. I went to see a fantastic DJ at the Warehouse Project in Manchester called Clark, and he didn't play Winter Lynn. And I was very disappointed. I've seen Placebo and they've not played Meds. So there are bands that almost just to be bloody minded, don't play the song.
Yeah, and sometimes it is bloody minded, isn't it? Because it's the fans ultimately who sort of turn around. They're coming along there. We know you want to promote your next album, but we'd love to hear the old stuff as well. That's how we know and love you.
That's right. But there are some bands that are still doing it. I spoke about my partner John Robb earlier. He's been releasing music up to 4 years ago. There are some bands that continue to release new music, and that's great. Public Image continue to release groundbreaking post-punk type albums, and that's fantastic. But you see the Sex Pistols on tour with Frank Carter, and they just play all the old stuff, and that's fine too, because that's what the fans want. But I kind of much rather see a band who's still doing it,
Oh no, I agree with you. I like to see both, and I think my very first concert was Hazel O'Connor. I remember
fantastic,
brilliant. So she's hopefully I see recent posts. She hasn't been well, but she's on the road to recovery now, which is great. But I was so surprised. It was my first concert. I was so looking forward to hearing Will You and the whole Breaking Glass thing, and it was just a little bit. It was all promoting the next album, and I thought, well, I better get the next album before I go to the next concert. So at least
that's the thing too, because when you go and see bands and they're trying to break new material, it's easy to sit there or stand there in the crowd and go, well, I don't recognize any of this. So one of my things was, if I'm going to see a new band or a band that's released some new stuff that I'm not familiar with, just listen to it before you go. The whole experience is far more enjoyable.
I absolutely thoroughly endorse that. Now, we talk about John Lydon. I mean, you've interviewed him a couple of times, and I say I was just enjoying your interview again with him. How do you prepare for a man who can say and do anything?
You're very, very nervous at the very beginning, because really you don't know, because you've watched those interviews where John can sit there and not say anything or be quiet or rude or whatever. But you know what? Research. Go and look at what's been done, and don't say something that's wrong or inappropriate. The reason that those 2 interviews are published in their entirety from start to finish is because I didn't make a mistake.
Yes. But also the mistakes are funny sometimes, because so often, I mean, I have people on the show a lot. I always say, look, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And so
that's right.
Very controversial characters on. I mean, Tommy Robinson's been on the show recently. We've had Errol Musk on the show, Roger Stone.
Yes, I saw.
And so often I'll put the stories which are in the press about them and give them the chance to put the right side of the story, because that's so important as well, isn't it?
And I think that's right. And I think that one of those controversies was with John, because, of course, Frank Carter started singing with the Sex Pistols as the front man. And, it was like, how do you feel about Frank joining the
Yeah.
Sex Pistols. And he said, well, it's karaoke, isn't it? He's like a puppet. And of course, that was picked up by lots and lots of media agencies who literally watched my interview, picked up on that, and then
Yeah.
spread it everywhere. Because you know what? You pick up those sound bites, or you encourage those sound bites to come from people. And, those are the interesting bits. The Lemmy
Oh,
story's interesting.
absolutely. I mean, it was P.T. Barnum who
Yeah.
said, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. So
Well,
you
that's right.
deliberately, you've
That's
got to
right.
do
But
it, don't
my
you?
thing was, well, let's go and interview Frank now, So
Yes.
I went down the PR route and we're still working on that. But that would be amazing to get the yin yang, to get the other side of the
Yeah, of
story.
course it
Because
would.
you know what? Frank and the Rattlesnakes were a really, really good band,
Oh,
and
fantastic. Oh,
Frank is a
absolutely.
great front man, So I respected him before he joined the Pistols. And, I sympathize with John because he's taking his gig, and John wouldn't go back. But
No,
to
no,
see
absolutely, and that's the thing. And did he elaborate on why he really fell out? I mean, there was all sorts of things about money and
Well, they fell
respect.
out. Well, they fell out because of Steve Jones' book and the subsequent series Pistol, which they didn't really get sort of, John's blessing for. And of course, it ended up acrimoniously, and they started to want to sort of sue each other and things like that. So, that's the sort of nitty gritty of it all, basically, and John's got a point. They're not singing new material. They're just and what one of the really interesting points was that John's a writer,
Yes.
and those songs mean things to him. The lyrics of the Pistol songs meant something to John and mean something to John. He was telling me about Death Disco, and it related to the death of his aunties. And it was kind of those lyrics are personal. So to see somebody else singing them, I mean,
Oh, no,
Brian
no, it's
Wilson was
difficult, and
cool.
I get the point, and you can sort of turn
Yeah,
around and do that. And but bands fall out all the time, and they're always acrimonious
absolutely.
because they're on the road. It's like a family, isn't it? And it's worse than a divorce
Yeah,
because what you're doing,
yeah.
you're then living it out in the public eye, and you're going to get separate interviews where you just rubbish each other all the time.
Well, this is true, but the thing is that the ownership of those bands go to the law, whatever it is, to the last man standing, and
Yeah.
therefore the last man standing tends to take the name. And it's been the same with Bucks Fizz. I was
Yes.
reading a story about Gong, one of my favourite bands. There's not one original member in the lineup of Gong, and they're still touring. And you see these crazy stories about bands just perpetuating themselves by actually having no original members, which I think's weird. But I wouldn't go and see what's essentially a covers band. I really don't
Yeah.
like covers bands.
Well,
I
they
mean, there
sort
are
of have the
plenty of Joy
DNA. They,
Division
they have
covers
the
bands.
DNA sometimes, don't they? Like Odyssey and so on and so forth. If
They,
if it's
they,
the
they,
son
they,
of somebody or somebody once shared a drink with them.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, but if the sons of if James McCartney and Zach Starkey and Julian or Sean Lennon got together in a band and called themselves the Beatles, maybe a few people would have issues,
Well, I
But
think that
I
they'd
think
end up with a writ more quicker than a nanosecond,
no,
probably the most
absolutely. I
litigious.
think I think Zach's trying to hang on to his job with the Who, isn't he?
Oh, how's that going? What's the
I
inside
don't
scoop on
know.
that?
I saw the live. I saw the incident and I
Yes.
think Roger was just getting a bit gnarly with him for missing a beat or something like that. But Zach is a really, really good drummer,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I just think they just sort of took issue with each other and it all exploded.
But
But
Roger's right to be gnarly. I mean, he's a professional. He's done it forever. He can
he is.
expect
But
perfection, can't he?
he should, yeah, but he clearly respects those around him, and I don't think that Zach fell out with Pete Townsend or there was any big international incident. I think it was just a temporary thing where he just lost it and then kind of regretted it and then sort of wanted him back because Zach's a world class,
Absolutely, but we
drummer,
love it, and it's the great way of selling tickets
yeah.
as well because people want to see. Oh, they're
No,
back together again. No, they're not.
absolutely. And the Who are a class band, I've
Yeah,
seen them
I
a
love it.
number of
I saw the
times.
orchestral one. Down at the O2 in Greenwich where they played with a full
Yeah,
orchestra. And brilliant, brilliant
yeah,
stuff. And it's
yeah,
love
no,
that sort of stuff. So you've interviewed lots of people, as
absolutely.
you say. What's been the most outrageous thing that you've learned from the people you've interviewed?
Oh, I absolutely don't know. I mean, not outrageous. I wouldn't say outrageous because those kind of interviewees don't like to spill any sort of outrageous stuff. I suppose the most controversial thing was the Frank Carter
Yeah.
puppet karaoke thing with John Lydon. But I interviewed Chaz Jankel once, who's famously wrote most of the songs on New Boots and Panties with Ian Dury, and he was telling me how he'd written "Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick," and you think little nuggets like that, and how that song was written in the studio at that point in time. And he said to Ian Dury, he said, when you say "hit me," think about being hit in the face with it. And so Ian went, "Hit me,
Yeah.
hit me," as though he was being punched in the face. And I love little nuggets like that of Chaz being in the studio and relating those stories to me. I don't really go for the obscene or the sensational, but those little nuggets that the
Oh
fans
no,
can
the
really
stories
get
behind the
onto.
songs are so important because people forget that. They think they
Totally.
just churn them out and get all the money in
That's
and that's
right.
it, which is interesting. Now you've got your
No,
big festival coming up, Louder Than
100%.
War Live, March the 14th, 2026,
Yep.
at Sea Power and
Yep.
more. What makes this festival different from any other?
What makes this festival's different is because it's being done by Louder Than War, and we're really, I mean, I know that sounds conceited, but we're a really respected organisation in and around Manchester and growing throughout the UK. The magazine's been going since 2010, 15 years. And John Robb, you see him
Yeah.
on TV all the time with his little Mohican. It's just a credible festival from a very credible organisation. And we've gone into business, John and I have gone into business with Ghostwriter, who is an events company in Bristol, because we're very, very busy doing other things, the New Dawn Fades play. So there's a lot going on, and it's just a very credible festival which represents what Louder Than War is all about. We're a bit alternative, we're a bit punk, so we'll have bands, Sea Power, fantastic band, Evil Blizzard, as well, with their sort of almost sort of krautrock type thing going on, and extended pieces. We're looking at other bands like Benefits, Panic Shack, Dits, and House of All, who carry on the fall sort of tradition. Although we haven't confirmed them all yet, but it's just a very credible festival, and it will grow. We're already looking at 2027.
Brilliant.
So this is a 1-day, 3-venue event, Academy 2, 3, and Club. And it's going to be fantastic.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward
And
to
the
that. Now,
tickets are selling crazily.
so get your tickets now.
Yeah.
You've got to be quick. Usual commission, obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's
Checks in
talk about the radio side. You set up Louder Than War Radio 2023, I think it was. Now 24/7 with Audrey Golden running it from New York.
She does. She does.
Brilliantly. What's been the wildest live moment so far?
Well, you talk about wildest live moments. I can see you picking away at those. Yeah, those wild
I'm going for your
bits,
soundbite. You've got to give us some sound bites. Come on.
Sound bites. No, well, really, we just run it as I just set it up as this, like, I came out of working with a local station called Radio Ultra, and I fell out with them, and I won't go into that. But
Why'd you fall out
pinged
with them?
back.
There you go.
Oh,
Why'd you?
No, I don't. I'm not going near politics. They were interviewing the Conservative Party, and I suggested they go and interview Labour.
They should do.
The Green Party, the Liberals, and they didn't, and they just fired me. And I'd done 83 free shows, but yeah, like I said,
They
I
gave
didn't really
the
want
shoe
to go
salesman the boot.
Yeah, exactly.
We can write the headline. There you go.
Very good. So I fell out with them. Well, they fell out with me after 83 free shows I did for them. So I pinged back and started Louder Than War Radio, and we started sort of doing interviews and things like that. And then, it was literally just a John Peel show, because my nerdy knowledge of music, I'll ask you a question. Who released an album in 1972 called Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah, there you go. Pink Floyd. Go on then.
No, not Pink Floyd. It was Medicine Head.
No, that's what I meant. Medicine Head, John Fiddler.
And because Medicine Head's album called Dark Side of the Moon wasn't a hit, Pink Floyd called their album The Dark Side.
John Fiddler's brilliant. I'm still in touch with him. He's a great guy, isn't he?
Well, there you go. He should have told you that little nugget.
He did. I had to fall into your trap, though. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked.
You did. So I did this. I set up the radio show. I did it for nearly 2 years. I got too busy with New Dawn Fade. So I said, right, okay, well, who would like to run it? And Audrey Golden, one of our really professional writers in New York, she said, I'll take it over for you. And now there's 35 shows running, and with the radio station live all day.
Oh, brilliant.
Ian Key has interviewed everybody from Self Esteem to Billy Bragg. He's just brought a book out.
Here we are. Plug the book as well. My commission is going to come rolling in on this. Look at that. The Clash.
The Clash. Ian Key's book. One of the writers at Louder Than War, who's now started, releasing books. Audrey Golden, one of the writers from Louder Than War, and she wrote about the women at Factory Records. She's just released a book on the Raincoats. So, those people who've worked in our organization have gone off to the Guardian and writing their own books and that sort of thing. So it's quite thrilling. But in answer to your original question about the radio station, it was a total blast from start to finish, and it just enabled me to pour out all of these new tracks to people, 25 tracks a week that they'd never heard of before. Right. So we interviewed.
And that's what the industry needs. And John Peel was a real blessing, wasn't it? I mean, he was what the music industry needed in terms of the mainstream.
We all listened to John.
Yeah,
absolutely. And he would give you the nuggets, and he would tell you all of the information surrounding the band. He'd come up with band names that you'd never heard of. They were just crazy, So, and I'd sort of tried to do that. A similar thing that I would do about 5 hours of preparation before the show and write down and look at all the information on when the release was, what it was called, all the backstory on the band and everything else. So not just play a record, but so these guys are from New York, and then I'd interview somebody like Bob Dylan, Bob Vylan, not Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, there you go. Okay.
Bobby Vylan, who's been in the press.
Really? I must have missed that one.
You must have missed that. So, so he was in the best.
What did he tell you? What did he tell you? Was that pre or
post? He told me that he was into extreme Lego.
Extreme Lego. What's extreme Lego?
He's an extreme Lego builder. He
has
a whole room. He has a whole room in his flat. And it's dedicated to extreme Lego. And there you go, you see. Ask people something that nobody else has even thought of.
I know, but I think, well, okay, so if you have it from extreme Lego, I'm not quite sure what that is. It's just a really difficult bit. Is that right?
It's just, building the Eiffel Tower out of Lego or the Millennium Falcon. And he's really into extreme Lego, which I find fascinating.
Well, a friend of mine used to run Lego TV, which was brilliant stuff. Really great brand, isn't it? It's gone absolutely everywhere.
They're just build Lego, and
I love it. And still the number one toy, just about. You get the simple things. Electronic. So, what's the one secret in your own journey then that you've never shared?
The one secret of my own journey is follow your dreams. I watched an interview with Stan Lee, a presentation to students by Stan Lee of Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
How dare I? Of Marvel, and he just said, you know what? If you just have one thing that you're really good at, if you really, really, really want to do that above anything else, then just go ahead and do it. And don't even think about it. Don't sit on your bum being an accountant for 40 years or a solicitor because you can. But do things that you really, really love. And when you really love them, do them with the passion they deserve. And
absolutely, they always say do things you really enjoy, because you'll never do a day's work in your life then, which is
that's the thing. And there's so many people locked into, and I understand circumstances, and not everybody has the luxury of being able to do what they want.
Yeah.
But really, you're not really fulfilled unless you do. And that's the point. And whereas I was a shoe buyer, and then I've become a writer, an editor, a producer, a West End producer.
Yes, I know.
Well, why have you done that? Well, because I can.
Yeah.
And because all I'm doing is transferring skills that I've learned in the business world to the theatre world, and I'm probably doing some things wrong, but a little bit of naivety is a good thing.
Oh no, we love naivety and vulnerability. It's very endearing.
People give you a bit of slack,
Yes. No, you've got to do. So talk about vulnerability then. What's the biggest mistake you've made, and what lessons did you learn?
The biggest mistake I made was going into business with a very large retail organisation to supply their shoes. I made the mistake of one, forming the relationship without fully being informed, and two, learning that large organizations like to borrow large sums of money from small organizations, even at the risk of them going out of business. And that's all I'm saying on the matter.
Oh,
don't lock yourself into agreements.
So if you could go back then, Nigel, to give advice to your younger self, what's the one piece of advice which would have changed everything?
The one piece of advice that would have changed everything. Yeah, just accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes and use them. Use the knowledge. That's all. The one thing, what wouldn't I have done? I wouldn't not have done anything, because I think it's better to regret something you have done than something you haven't done, which is the opening line to the Orbital song, Satan.
Oh no, we love it. Permission is much easier. Forgiveness is much easier than permission, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So
100%.
looking, I mean, you're such an open book. People know lots about you, but what's the most
Yeah.
controversial opinion that you hold that might surprise people?
That I've a very sort of tolerant and open nature. That whilst I've been successful my whole life, I really care about people and I follow a sort of semi-socialist agenda. I disagree with the people who say that the boat people should be drowned in the sea. I'm very sort of humble and tolerant of all of that, and I just feel that there are too many people sort of trading off the misery of others. And I'm a very sort of I've got 8 grandkids, for God's sake. I
Eight. Good.
love my family. People probably don't know that.
Can you name them all?
Yes, I can, but I'm not
Go
going
on
to name
then.
I can. Okay, so we've got Lou, we've got Theo, we've got Oscar, we've got Layla, we've got Felix. You're making me think now, aren't you?
God, that's
Um,
five.
we have Nathaniel, we have Bobby and Charlie.
There
There you
you
go.
go.
Yeah,
Phew, that was lucky,
all
wasn't
8
it?
of them.
It's got to
And
be good.
that's under
So,
stress. That was pretty good
I know,
going,
I
that,
know.
wasn't
We
it?
love it. We love the stress. It's a bit of jeopardy for you. No,
Yeah,
and I'm with you
totally.
on the humanitarian stuff. This politics
Yeah.
pollutes everything. And what we
Well, I
need to
don't
do is
like talking about
remember
politics.
behind the headlines, there are
Yeah,
victims on all sides. Like war, the first casualty in
yeah.
war is the truth, isn't it?
And there's suffering, and there's more suffering than you and I could ever contemplate, And that's it. That's all I've
No, no,
got to say on
absolutely
the
right.
matter.
Look, finally, then you've got these wonderful. Well done for naming them all. Very
Yeah.
impressive. It's got to be good.
Well, let me talk about New Dawn Fades for 2 minutes.
Go on then.
The Joy Division play. So we're playing 23 dates of New Dawn Fades, a story of Joy Division and Manchester around the UK. We're even hitting the West End at the Bloomsbury
I know I'm
Theatre.
going to come along to that.
You must, I'll invite you. And we're playing at the Everyman in Cheltenham and all the way up to the Royal Northern College of Music. So that's the ultimate in, following your dream, really.
Oh, I love
And
it. Love will tear us apart. It's brilliant. I love Joy Division. It's got to be good. You've frozen. Ah, there we go. I think the hamster wheels have stopped altogether. You have frozen, but just in case he has, that was Nigel Carr. Delighted to have him on the show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you're very welcome to write in to the Andrew Eborn Show. Follow me at Octopus TV, at Andrew Eborn, and on YouTube, you can click that button. It is free to subscribe, everybody's favorite 4-letter word. I think you're back again. You froze for a
yeah, I
nanosecond.
froze. I don't
You
know
did,
why.
you
I'm
plug,
sorry
and
about
in my wonderful radio happy voice, I was just spilling. But you're back for us now. Just finish
that.
on this one then. In a
Yeah,
100 years' time, you've got the 8 grandchildren. You've named all of them. Well done.
yeah.
How would you, Nigel Carr, like to be remembered?
I don't think that kind of legacy thing is important. I think all you've got to do is make sure that you provide well for your children and leave them the legacy of love. I don't not bothered about being remembered in print or people writing about me. I just want my family to love what I do.
I love it. The legacy of love. Come on, there's an
Yes,
album there somewhere. It's going to be.
100%.
Good luck with all of that. I look forward to seeing you at the Bloomsbury here in London. Good luck with all the
Fabulous.
other endeavours. But for now, Nigel Carr, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Wonderful.